much. Kendall Coffey served as a federal prosecutor and here to give us a little more perspective. Kendall, I think a lot of people are wondering, how was the President Trump, able to avoid getting a mugshot with any of the other indictments, and why was there an insistence on getting one in this case?
Well, every system, every local jail, every authority has different procedures and some different requirements. In Georgia, as we see, they absolutely insist on a mugshot, which is very much a common part of the criminal process. How many of them we've seen over the years? What's so remarkable is while a mugshot is normally kind of the ultimate visual disgrace, here it seems to be a centerpiece of a fundraising effort. Very strange everything about this case.
Fundraising? Can you specify?
Well, he's put the mugshot on his I'm going to call it a Twitter account, and is trying to promote fundraising, and that's one of the things that's being put out there.
Well, I think there are a lot of people who could argue, even without him actually asking for money, there are a lot of people who support him who are going to give it to him, because every time these indictments happen, there is this rush of support and people who want to defend who they believe is not guilty.
And of course, he's got massive attorney's fees. Yeah. One of the things to focus on is, what about the other 18 defendants? Do they really want to ride this thing all the way to the end with Donald Trump? And every one of those defendants, I assume, has friends, families who are saying, this is a nightmare. You've got to get out of this somehow. This is Trump's problem. It shouldn't be your problem. And they're going to, at some point, give some thought to, does it make more sense to cooperate against Donald Trump if they can, or do they want to sit in a RICO conspiracy criminal trial with a total of 19 defendants facing significant prison time if the case turns out is with a guilty verdict?
So you said RICO. We want to remind viewers at home that relates to those racketeering charges that some legal experts consider a stretch for this particular case. What is your perspective? I mean, I bring up my interview with Alan Dershowitz a couple of times in these conversations because he straight out said Fani Willis is a liar and that no one should believe her. But what is your perspective on the breadth of charges and the fact that racketeering was included?
Well, I think it's a stretch. Doesn't mean that it isn't going to be a successful stretch, but it's a stretch. RICO, as you know, as I'm sure you talked about with viewers, was originally conceived for mobsters or drug cartels. And the essence of it is you've got to have a joint criminal enterprise. What we have here is, over a period of not that many weeks, sort of a far-flung series of efforts to persuade people, legally or illegally, that'll be decided by a jury, to do something to overturn the 2020 election. But were they really operating together like a mafia family? Hard to say. Some of the components go all the way from Coffey County, Georgia, to the halls of the Department of Justice and people who had no connection with each other. Now, the laws are potentially broad. I'm not saying this is going to get thrown out as a RICO charge, and there are plenty of other charges here that are significant. But I do think there will be a very significant legal argument as to whether all of these defendants and all of these charges are brought together in one RICO case.
And that will lengthen the time that we see this go on for sure. I have a question for you, just from your experience as a federal prosecutor. For a DA to go for that kind of a stretch, as you described it, is that something that a judge looks at, and how would it be perceived?
Well, there'll be legal challenges. There'll be individuals who say, on the face of this indictment, this is not chargeable. You can't bring this as a RICO. You got a lot of crimes here, and prosecutors have, latitude in which crimes they choose to prosecute based on the evidence. But is this RICO? I think that will be a front-end legal issue that the defendants will be pushing on. It'll be a critical battle in terms of how this case turns out. Because if I'm one of the distant defendants and the judge says, nope, y'all got to show up for trial all together, hear all the evidence in a RICO trial, I'm looking for some way out of this case.
Kendall Coffey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.